a long line to get into this country legally. Is there any kind of discussion about giving people who are coming here the right way money?
Why would we be giving people who are coming here the right way money?
Why are you giving people who came here the right way?
Oh, snap! The new White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, is worse than Jen Psaki, but apparently she was the affirmative action hire because her qualifications were the same as Kamala Harris and Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. She's black. Except she's more qualified because she's gay too. Hey guys, my name's Jason Wesley and this is not a podcast. So, former White House press secretary, also known as Circleback Psaki, has stepped down to take a job at MSNBC. Biden's press secretary, Jen Psaki, will begin new global role with MSNBC as early as September after exiting the White House this week. But before she left, she announced her replacement, Karine Jean-Pierre.
I just want to take the opportunity to celebrate and congratulate my friend, my colleague, my partner in truth, Karine Jean-Pierre, the next White House press secretary. She will be the first Black woman, the first out LGBTQ plus person to serve in this role, which is amazing because representation matters. And she is going to, she will give a voice to so many.
Really? She'll give a voice to so many? Because I thought the press secretary was supposed to be the voice of the executive branch. The White House press secretary is a senior White House official whose primary responsibility is to act as spokesperson for the executive branch of the United States federal government, especially with regard to the president, senior aides, and executives, as well as government policies. But it's so important for you to be black in 2022. Any shade of black will do. And if you can't be black, you should be gay. Or one of the letters of the LGBTQIA plus and sometimes Y community.
I am obviously acutely aware that my presence at this podium represents a few firsts. I am a black, gay, immigrant woman, the first of all three of those to hold this position.
Apparently, to her, everything is racist.
Racism, sexism, misogyny, all of that, homophobia, xenophobia, we connect it to Donald Trump, but it existed before Donald Trump. Fox News was racist before coronavirus. They are racist during the coronavirus. Fox News will be racist after the coronavirus. Racism was here before Donald Trump, and sadly, it will be here after Donald Trump. It walks like a racist, talks like a racist, acts like a racist. It is a racist. And we have a racist president in the White House who really pushes his racism like a peacock.
Donald Trump is the first president to have purposefully has made racism the center of his campaign, of his administration, clearly.
I think Donald Trump wants to get rid of legal immigration, and it's because of people who come from brown and black countries. He might do away with DACA, which is another moral line that he would be crossing, which is something that would be advancing a white supremacy agenda. Donald Trump was a white supremacist in 2011 when he decided to be the grand wizard of the birther movement. Birtherism, which is inherently racist. They want to put up these awful voter suppression laws, which is racism, to make it difficult for people of color to vote. And voter suppression is racism. That's exactly what it is. Xenophobia and racism has always played a role in outbreaks. If you look at SARS, if you look at Ebola, if you look at yellow fever or Spanish flu.
We've been talking about the coronavirus and how it is an epidemic in this country, which is true. But another epidemic in this country is racism. Remember George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and so many lives, black lives that were lost last year because of violence, because of racism, because of, white supremacy.
Can we kind of dispel this whole idea that the Tea Party was about the deficit when clearly that is not true? What it was about was a reactionary to the racism in America that we were seeing at the time.
And what are we going to do to actually start the process? Because it's going to take some time to uproot systemic racism.
We have to continue to call out this racism. We cannot stop not doing that.
So everyone knows that inflation's up, even causing people like Jim Cramer, the guy that claimed that the military should be called up to administer forced vaccinations on Americans.
Require vaccination universally. Have the military run it.
To acknowledge that it's worse than we expected.
And because the companies didn't report until early May, we just really didn't know how bad inflation was.
You talked about these retail earnings being key, without a doubt.
Yes.
And now we're through most of the big ones.
I didn't know they'd be this bad.
All right.
Now, he says that he believes that consumers are buying luggage and sunscreen and believes it has to do with people being locked down and wanting to travel.
Existential moment in the Target call where Brian Cornell says they're buying sunscreen. And now, I don't want Brian Cornell, serious businessman, but But what he's basically saying, I think, by that is they're not doing what we thought they're doing. They are done fixing up their house. Karine makes that point very clear. They're just buying little things now, and they're traveling, luggage. So what people are doing is doing something that we should have, I think, maybe presumed, which is that they're seeing the world. They're doing things with their lives because they've been locked down.
Sounds to me like people are buying luggage and sunscreen and moving to places like Texas and Florida.
Companies packing up and leaving California in favor of business-friendly policies and lower living costs in states like Texas and Florida.
Anyways, Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about a tweet from Joe Biden that said this. You want to bring down inflation? Let's make sure the wealthiest corporations pay their fair share. Here's how she responded.
The president's Twitter account posted the other day, you want to bring down inflation, let's make sure the wealthiest corporations pay their fair share. How does raising taxes on corporations reduce inflation?
Are you talking about a specific tweet?
He tweeted, you want to bring down inflation, let's make sure the wealthiest corporations pay their fair share.
Look, we have talked about this past year about making sure that the wealthiest among us are paying their fair share. And that is important to do, and that is something that the president has been working on every day when we talk about inflation and lowering costs. And so it's very important that as we're seeing costs rise, as we're talking about how to build a America that's safe, that's equal for everyone and doesn't leave everyone behind. That is an important part of that as well.
But how does raising taxes on corporations lower the cost of gas, the cost of a used car, the cost of food for everyday Americans?
So look, I think we encourage those who have done very well, right? Especially those who care about climate change, to support a fair tax code that doesn't charge manufacturers, workers, cops, builders a higher percentage of their earnings, that the most fortunate people in our nation, and not let that stand in the way of reducing energy costs and fighting this existential problem, if you think about that as an example. And to support basic collective bargaining rights as well, right? That's also important. But look, it is, without having a fair tax code, which is what I'm talking about, then like manufacturing workers, cops, it's not fair for them to have to pay higher taxes than the folks who are not paying taxes at all.
So you're just not going to answer the question. You're going to spout a bunch of euphemisms and call him the next reporter. Got it. Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon.com, tweeted back to Biden. The newly created Disinformation Board should review this tweet, or maybe they need to form a new non-sequitur board instead. Raising corporate taxes is fine to discuss. Taming inflation is critical to discuss. Mushing them together is just misdirection. So the press secretary was asked about this tweet from Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos came out and tweeted about that. He said the newly created Disinformation Board should review this tweet. Would you be okay with that?
Look, it's not a huge mystery why one of the wealthiest individuals on earth, right, opposes an economic agenda that is for the middle class, that cuts some of the biggest costs families face, fights inflation for the long haul, right? And that's what we're talking about. That's why we're talking about lowering inflation here, and adds to the historic deficit reduction the president is achieving by asking the richest taxpayers and corporations to pay their fair share. That is what we're talking about.
And speaking of the Ministry of Truth/Disinformation Board that the Biden administration was starting under the DHS, it has been put on hold apparently. And before I go on, let me just give you the difference between misinformation and disinformation. So misinformation is incorrect or misleading information presented as fact. For example, if you get the COVID vaccine, you won't get COVID.
We know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person.
Now, misinformation is differentiated from disinformation, which is just deliberately deceptive. For example, the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation.
These emails are made up.
The information found on the laptop may be part of a Russian disinformation campaign.
Part of a Russian disinformation effort.
Described by many intelligence experts as having hallmarks.
All the hallmarks of a Russian
disinformation.
Russian disinformation.
Disinformation campaign.
This is a classic example of the right-wing media media machine.
Washington Post, how the Biden administration let right-wing attacks derail its disinformation efforts. A pause of the Department of Homeland Security's newly created board comes after its head, Nina Jankowicz, was the victim of coordinated online attacks as the administration struggled to respond. So Nina Jankowicz is the victim, you see. She's not an elected official, and she spread misinformation and disinformation herself. She said there's no deep state.
Talking about the deep state and things like that, which is a thread among conspiracy communities here in the United States, that there is this secret cabal here in Washington working to undermine the American people. It couldn't be farther from the truth as someone who works with and around public servants every day.
She also said that she wants trustworthy people to add context to tweets.
And I am eligible for it because I'm verified, but there are a lot of people who shouldn't be verified who aren't, legit, in my opinion. I mean, they are real people, but they're not trustworthy. Anyway, so verified people can essentially start to edit Twitter the same sort of way that Wikipedia is, so they can add context to certain tweets. So just as an easy example, not from any political standpoint, if President Trump were still on Twitter and tweeted a claim about voter fraud, someone could add context from one of the 60 lawsuits that went through the court, or something that an election official in one of the states said, perhaps your own Secretary of State and his news conferences, something like that. Adding context so that people have a fuller picture rather than just an individual claim on a tweet.
But back in 2020, under President Trump, she said that she wouldn't want to see the executive branch have the power to call things fake news.
Imagine that, with President Trump right now calling all of these news organizations that have inconvenient for him stories that they're getting out there, that he's calling fake news and now lashing out at platforms. I would never want to see our executive branch have that sort of power. And that's why, the legislative process with our duly elected officials is really important, that sort of consultative rulemaking process. And we can't just govern by executive order anymore.
Now, after all this information came out, she said the Disinformation Board was undone by a disinformation campaign.
Unfortunately and ironically, we were undone exactly by a disinformation campaign.
Now, here's the press secretary's response.
The board has never convened. It never convened, and the board is pausing.
You could do so. You want.
So if it's pausing because you think the board was mischaracterized, then the Disinformation Board is being shut down because of disinformation? Is that what's happening here?
Look, I mean, the board was put forth for a purpose, right? To make sure that we really did address what was happening across the country when it came to disinformation.
And it's okay now, 75 days.
It's just going to pause. There's been a mischaracterizations from outside forces, and so now what we're going to do is we're going to pause it, and we're going to do an assessment. But the work doesn't stop. We're still going to continue the work. The DHS is still.
Oh, well, it's good to know the work's still going to be done, just not publicly, just in secret now. Or is that misinformation?
Will you be mine?